This is part 10 of how the indigenous nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy laid the blueprint for one of the most agriculturally rich landscapes in the Northeast, and how that foundation gave rise to one of the most premier wine regions in this country, the Finger Lakes. So in the last video, we talked about how Colonel Vinstinct struck the Onondaga Nation first to clear the way for Sullivan and Clinton to execute their main campaign, which happened in the summer of 1779. So Sullivan led the primary force of about 3,200 soldiers from Pennsylvania, which was in the south, and Clinton led a separate force of 1,600 soldiers from the north through the Finger Lakes. And they joined forces at Tioga, which is on the border of New York and Pennsylvania, to create a combined force of about 5,000 soldiers. And Washington's orders to Sullivan was explicit and total: destroy every settlement, ruin every crop, and ensure the land was not merely overrun, but destroyed, with no possibility of the Haudenosaunee returning and planting. And over the course of 5 months, from June to October of 1779, his plans were carried out. 40 Haudenosaunee villages were burned to the ground, hundreds of thousands of bushels of corn were destroyed, and generations of apple, peach, and cherry orchards along the shores were torched. And actually embedded within the Sullivan Army were these land surveyors who were actually mapping out everything that they found on the land. Because once the Haudenosaunee were gone, the new American government had to parcel out land and distribute that land to settlers and Revolutionary War veterans. And when the American Revolution finally ended in 1783, the dispossession of the Haudenosaunee continued, this time from legal manipulation as opposed to military force. In 1784, the Treaty of Fort Stanwix was signed, forcing the Haudenosaunee to give up their land. But this was obviously not a consensual agreement. Haudenosaunee leaders were held under duress during the negotiation, and the leaders of the Six Nations refused to ratify the treaty because they felt like those who had signed it didn't have no business signing it, because they never had the authority to give away their land in the first place. But of course, the American government ratified it anyway, and the demolished Haudenosaunee land was carved up into what became known as the military tract for Central New York. Revolutionary War veterans were literally paid in Haudenosaunee land for their service during this campaign, and when it was over, the Haudenosaunee presence in the Finger Lakes nearly became erased. This campaign ended up causing over 5,000 Haudenosaunee people to flee north to Fort Niagara in the dead of winter. What awaited them there was almost as devastating as what they left behind.